One day, Peter Quill met Gamora at a pub. Gamora told Peter that a part of her was missing, and Peter understood how she felt and apologized because this wasn't what she wanted. Gamora asked if that was all Peter could say, and Peter agreed. He even mentioned that Groot and Rocket felt the same way. He added that Drax had left the team to deal with the Soul Gem. Gamora picked up the suitcase containing Peter's Power Stone. She said they could force the issue with this stone. Gamora said she could open the Soul Gem and retrieve the part of herself that was missing, but Peter replied that it could lead to many deaths. Gamora then asked Peter not to attend the Infinity Watch meeting organized by Doctor Strange, but Peter said he had no choice because the Infinity Stones must be protected, and if joining the Infinity Watch was the solution, then he had to do it. Gamora finally kissed Peter and left the pub, while Peter also left with his Power Stone. Upon meeting Groot and Rocket, Groot already knew Gamora wouldn't want to come along, and Peter confirmed it. Rocket said that at least Peter had tried. Groot felt that anyone who tried would surely fail. He didn't blame Peter as the weakest member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but Peter retorted that the Guardians of the Galaxy no longer existed. On Earth, a cyclist appears to be hit by a car, and time suddenly freezes. Drax's voice is heard saying that he used to consider Earth his home, but always felt uncomfortable returning here. He never expected to meet Guardians again after leaving the team, and hoped they had forgiven him. He should have apologized for attacking Gamora, but after touching this Soul Gem, he realized Gamora must not open it. Drax is seen arriving with Adam Warlock and Iron Lad. As soon as they appear at the spot where the cyclist was hit, Adam says that now he knows why Iron Lad stopped time. He asks if this person is someone important. Iron Lad moves the cyclist out of the way so he won't be hit by the car, then answers that he doesn't know. But saving one person is the same as saving one universe. Drax is surprised that Doctor Strange allowed young Kang to attend this meeting, and Iron Lad replies that it's due to the circumstances. Drax asks, what if this cyclist was actually supposed to die here? Then Iron Lad asks how many times Drax has died, and upon hearing that, Drax tells him to shut up. The three of them walk away while time resumes, and the cyclist falls to the side of the sidewalk. After the three of them left, 3 cars arrived carrying Bullseye, Turk, Tombstone, Typhoid Mary, Sandman, and Spot. Turk told the others that if shots were fired, they had to find the one holding the stone, and if he pointed it while smiling, that meant they were about to attack, so they had to take them down. When getting out of the car, Bullseye noticed the cyclist and asked if he could kill him, but Turk said no. After reading his mind, he realized the man was just an ordinary cyclist. He told them to hurry because they were running late. Meanwhile, the Guardians of the Galaxy's ship also appeared to land in the forest. Rocket, Groot, and Peter were seen walking down from the ship, with Groot recounting that he'd once vowed to circle the Earth and kill anyone who dared to oppose him. Peter replied that was progress, while Rocket expressed how much he hated this place. At Belvedere Castle in Central Park. Doctor Strange was standing atop the castle's tower shortly after Carol flew over and apologized for being late. Doctor Strange replied that she was right on time. He asked how things were on Kree. Carol answered that they seemed to be worn out from being beaten up, then asked about the whereabouts of the other Avengers. Doctor Strange replies that their friends are here. In his view, given what the Avengers aim to achieve here later, he wants some of them to step aside for now. Just then, Turk arrives with his entourage. Carol comments that this meeting shouldn't have taken place on Earth, but Doctor Strange explains that some people can't leave Earth. And upon seeing that Turk has brought his friends along, he says that's a real shame. As Turk's group made their way up to the castle, they ran into Peter Quill's group. Bullseye teased them, remarking that there was a raccoon carrying a weapon and sitting in a tree, then asked if they weren't supposed to be carrying weapons. Groot told Bullseye that his friend always carried a weapon. Seeing this, Bullseye laughed even harder and said that the tree could talk. Once they all gathered in the center of the courtyard with the infinity symbol floating in the air, Doctor Strange greeted them. He explained that in this Infinity Watch, Captain Marvel held the Reality Stone, Turk Barrett held the Mind Stone, Peter Quill, Groot, and Rocket held the Power Stone. Adam Warlock, Drax, and Iron Lad held the Soul Gem, while Doctor Strange guarded the Time Stone. Turk commented that there should be 6 stones here, and Doctor Strange confirmed that the bearer of the Space Stone was present but invisible. According to Strange, Thanos wanted this stone, and furthermore, there was damage to the Soul Gem that directly affected their reality. Turk asked where the Space Stone was, so Doctor Strange called someone and said they wanted proof that the bearer of the Space Stone was there. Turk feels this isn't part of the agreement, and Bullseye agrees. He asks why their friend can join the meeting via phone. Doctor Strange insists that this is for their safety, not the woman's. Bullseye pulls out an ace of spades, saying it's nonsense, but suddenly a bullet pierces the card. In a room with a rifle in her hand, Black Widow says she already knew someone would try to disrupt this meeting, but she can't wait to empty this magazine and walk out as a hero. On the phone, Doctor Strange tells her to hold that thought. At that moment, Bullseye looked at the buildings in front of him. He said he couldn't see the shooter. Bullseye then sniffed his card from earlier, muttering, "Bonjour," arousal. Bullseye then whispered to Turk, "You might give me a chance to kill another of Red's old girls." Doctor Strange continued, explaining that the Space Stone was here. He wanted them all to devise a plan to protect the Infinity Stones, and if possible, to do so far from Earth. Turk commented, "Pass." And upon hearing his voice, Peter realized it was Turk who had been eavesdropping on their conversation through his stone. Turk replied that he was glad to meet someone who'd revealed his secret in front of the stone. Suddenly, Tombstone pointed his gun at Rocket, and Rocket pointed his weapon at Tombstone, ordering him to lower his gun, but the man said he was bulletproof. Rocket then said how much he hated this planet. Adam Warlock said that the world inside the Soul Gem in his hand had been corrupted, and the gem felt hungry, while Carol argued that the gems must be separated and no one knew the location of the others. Doctor Strange felt that the chance to defeat Thanos lay in using all 6 stones against him. Doctor Strange then combined the power of the Reality Stone in Carol's hand with the Time Stone in his own to see what would happen in the future. In that vision, Thanos lay helpless and headless. Iron Lad asks if this is real, and Doctor Strange confirms it, while Adam Warlock asks Carol who defeated Thanos. Turk, who saw the projection of Thanos' future, asked who Thanos was, and Bullseye replied that he might be a big man who died. Adam said that Thanos was the most terrifying thing they knew, but Turk felt he had seen many terrifying things before. Then Adam said that the headless corpse was a warning that Turk intended to control all the stones because there was another power that wanted them. Elsewhere, a massive sailboat is seen sailing through a dark world. Floa, who is on the boat with Loki, explains that this is the location marked on Heimdall's map of stars. Loki asked if this was the place where he could find answers. He wondered if someone was manipulating this from behind the scenes. However, Floa admitted she didn't know the answer to that question, but she knew this was the god of quarry's domain. There's a legend that treasure lies beneath the quarry of creation, while the gods reside atop the sediment. According to Floa, she had once read stories about the witches. They still roamed the area and considered this place their home. Perhaps Loki could ask them why he had been deceived. At that moment, 3 witches were seen at the rim of the crater. Loki stepped off the boat and introduced himself, but the 3 witches told him to be quiet. The 3 of them were seen shrouded in flames, and they all said that this was the end of the infinity. Loki asked what lay beneath them and what the quarry of creation was, while Floa, who was watching the sorcerer, asked if women usually set themselves on fire to escape Loki. Loki said that this was enough, but suddenly a blinding light made his eyes hurt. At that moment, another Loki appeared wearing the Infinity Stones on his shirt and carrying Mjolnir. The original Loki asks what this is, while Floa comments that the other Loki is quite handsome. The Loki from another dimension asks where he is. He then remembers being struck and falling into another reality. He sees the Loki from this reality and says that must be his other self. The Loki from the other reality asked where the Infinity Stone and Mjolnir were, because without them he couldn't face Requiem and Devandra. He realized this universe was bound to fall just like the others. Hearing this, the Loki from this universe drew a knife and said he might be able to save this universe, while Floa pointed out that the stone could only be used in its original universe. The other Loki then opens a teleportation portal. He says he must return to his reality immediately, while Loki from this reality complains about the stone's rules. He asks his other self to open another universe beneath this one first, but the other Loki refuses because his reality needs him. Loki still asks how the other Loki lifted Mjolnir. Did he alter his magic with the stone? The other Loki laughed at the foolish Loki, saying he would tell Sif the Grim about this. Loki commented that the party would soon be over. Just then, an octopus tentacle appeared, pulling the other Loki into a teleportation portal, but he said this wasn't how he intended to die, so he yanked the tentacle until it snapped. In another reality, Iron Man called out to Loki to return to the fight, and the other Loki flew in wielding Mjolnir. Meanwhile, the Loki from the original reality saw a massive creature fighting the Avengers. He asked what it was, and Floa explained it was a Soul Eater. Loki asked if they could defeat it. Suddenly, Loki's scream echoed as he tried to drag the creature into hell, and its blood spattered out of the portal. Seeing this, Loki decided to search for the Infinity Stones. He said that the other Loki had mentioned the original universe, so he needed to find out who had deceived him. Floa asked if he could be better than the other Lokis, and Loki replied that he wasn't the strongest, but according to Floa, he was worthy of lifting Mjolnir. Back at the Infinity Watch, Peter asked, aren't we supposed to use these stones to save Earth's people? Rocket added that if Earth's problems were solved, perhaps the issue wouldn't spread to the galaxy, but Bullseye protested, saying Earth was a great place. Doctor Strange insists that the stones must leave Earth, but he tells Turk that now is his chance. At that moment, Turk uses the Mind Stone to read Peter's thoughts. He hears Peter say that he thought the stones were about money, but it turns out they're about power. Turk then says that the stone Peter is carrying is a fake. Peter couldn't accept being slandered like that. He opened the suitcase and reached for the stone, but there was only a projection of the stone inside. Rocket asked what was happening, while Drax immediately asked where Gamora was. Sandman said this was a trap. He transformed into a giant to attack, but Groot also grew to giant size to stop Sandman's assault, declaring he would bring this fraud down. At that moment, Peter asked Turk, "You said you could hear the stone, so where is it now?" Turk replied that the stone was above them. Above them, Tony and Thor were watching the fight below. Tony said the fight had begun and asked if they were going to help. Thor replied that this was in line with King Thor's earlier words. He had already warned Steven that he wouldn't be able to get the Mind Stone. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck Tony, knocking him down, and Thor warned the Avengers that they were under attack from above. It appeared that Spot was fighting Captain Marvel, while Steven shielded himself from Bullseye's blows and told Turk he would regret this. Bullseye asked where the red-haired assassin was, while Drax knocked Tombstone to the ground and ordered him to surrender or he would die. Just then, a hooded woman descended from the sky and ordered them to hand over the stones so no one else would get hurt. The woman said she meant no harm, then tossed Thanos' head as proof of her words. Seeing the head, they were all shocked. Drax asked who she was, and the woman replied, "Thanos said I was conducting his requiem. That's as good a name as any." The woman then struck Drax with her sword, sending him flying through a building. Groot attacked with his roots, intending to kill her, but Requiem told him he'd better save his strength. Requiem then cut off Groot's hand and ordered them to hand over the stones, but Peter refused and used his gun to freeze Requiem. Requiem easily shattered the ice. At that very moment, Rocket shot Requiem in the face with his weapon and asked how long they'd have to keep cleaning up Earth's mess. At that moment, Requiem's mask shattered, revealing that she was Gamora. Seeing this, Peter immediately asked why Gamora was doing this, and Gamora replied that she had already tried to ask for the stones nicely, while Steven reminded Peter that the Power Stone was at the hilt of Gamora's sword. Peter agreed. Peter pointed out that Thanos was Gamora's father. He'd kidnapped her and raised her. So who knows, maybe Thanos had programmed her to act this way. Meanwhile, Adam Warlock was still fighting Tombstone behind Peter. Gamora said Thanos was dead, and she had to activate the stone to fix what was broken, but Peter asked what she planned to do, since he was certain Gamora wouldn't kill him. Gamora replied that no one ever truly dies, then stabbed Peter's body with her sword. In the past, Several people are seen lying dead in front of Thanos and young Gamora. Gamora asks why Thanos is doing this, and Thanos replies that the universe has its own rules, and only the strongest survive after fate has tested them from infancy to death. It sounds like one victim is still alive, so Thanos grabs his axe and cuts off part of that survivor's head. Gamora says that Thanos chose to kill, and Thanos replies that the universe moves through him. Gamora climbs onto the corpse's body. She reminds him that when her parents died, Thanos once said they wouldn't live forever. But Thanos answers that there is one way to live forever: by having a child, by creating, nurturing, and shaping that child's life. Their own lives continue through their child. Gamora says that someday someone will succeed in stopping Thanos, and Thanos agrees. He says there is someone out there destined to kill him. In the past, afterward. Requiem slices off Thanos' head, then plunges his sword into Thanos' hand until it withers. Requiem removes her helmet, and Thanos' voice is heard commenting on the Power Stone in Gamora's sword. Gamora speaks to Thanos' severed head. She had expected him to be angrier, but the dead Thanos replies that he's pleased his favorite daughter killed him, and he congratulates Gamora on becoming the new queen of the Chitauri. Gamora replied that it didn't matter to her, she would just let them die. After that, Gamora grabbed her bag and green smoke spread around her from the bag on her back. Gamora then stuffed Thanos' head into her bag. She told Thanos they wouldn't speak again, but Thanos said Gamora couldn't be so sure. Thanos said that if Gamora seemed set to meet her friend, he wanted her to remember that love could stand in the way of ambition. At that moment, Gamora was seen slashing one of the Chitauri soldiers in front of her at this moment. Gamora told Peter to step aside, but Peter said he was sure Gamora wouldn't kill him. Gamora then thrusts her sword into Peter's stomach, but suddenly, time freezes. Doctor Strange lifts Peter up, saying it's a good thing he brought the Time Stone, and then tells Gamora he'll deal with her later. Once time resumes, Groot asks if his friend is hurt, and Doctor Strange replies that he wasn't injured after all. After Doctor Strange set Peter down, Peter asked if Gamora had just killed him, and Doctor Strange confirmed it, saying Gamora killed him after Peter challenged her to do so. Doctor Strange said that in another universe, Peter was dead for good. Stephen wasn't even sure how they'd survive here. Stephen then cast a spell and directed it at Peter, and blood splattered on his shirt. Stephen said that the blood that had been spilled must be returned to someone. Meanwhile, Turk, protected by Typhoid Mary and Bullseye, decided they had to retreat. But suddenly, Bullseye warned Turk to be careful. It turned out a giant Groot was about to fall on Turk. At that moment, a teleportation portal opened near Turk, and Stephen pulled Turk into it. In that place, glowing with red light, Stephen forbade Turk from touching anything, while Turk remarked, thinking Stephen and his friend were going to snatch the stone from his hands. Stephen replied that they had already considered that, and Turk said he could use his stone to force Stephen to hand over his own, but then asked if Stephen had given him a dose of the drug. Octopus tentacles were seen wrapping around Turk. Stephen told him not to move because the creature wanted to devour his happiness, and Stephen asked why Turk was using a staff to hold the stone. Turk explained that the staff belonged to the Kingpin. He'd had the idea when the Kingpin was about to beat himself up, just as he'd once beaten up Turk. Stephen recited a spell, and the creature coiling around Turk began to glow. Stephen said he'd destroyed it. Stephen then asked if Turk believed in fate, and Turk replied that he didn't know what he believed in anymore, but he certainly believed in himself. Stephen said he was trying to defy fate, and that Turk was certainly destined to hold the stone until just moments ago because Stephen had to take the stone away from Earth. Stephen then cast a spell to show what had happened in the park earlier. Gamora was seen fighting Captain Marvel. Stephen said Turk made money with the Mind Stone, but Gamora didn't care about the money. Stephen admitted that when he found out Turk had the Mind Stone, he was amazed at how quickly Turk realized he could make money in the stock market. Turk said that people couldn't accuse him of insider trading if he was only hearing secrets that entered his mind on their own. At that moment, Gamora was seen fighting Thor, while Stephen told Turk that Turk had placed a bet and had already won. Turk retorted that winning streaks never last, and Stephen agreed, especially since Turk's money meant nothing to these people. Stephen erased the vision of the fight, saying that these people would take the stone and kill Turk, or Turk could walk away from this fight with his money and his life. Turk agreed to hand over the Mind Stone on the condition that Stephen provide a marker, meaning he'd receive assistance from Stephen whenever he wanted, and Stephen agreed provided they got out of this situation alive. Stephen then snapped his fingers and Turk suddenly appeared in an apartment room. The stone on Turk's staff was gone, and he wondered if he'd agreed too easily and Stephen had tricked him. Then suddenly, a beam of light shot toward where Turk was. It turned out to be a shot from Rocket that blew up the room Turk was in. Rocket said this was Earth's battle and the explosion was his fault, so they'd have a meeting and leave this place. At that moment, Gamora told them to look at the destruction they had caused. She asked them to help her open the Soul Gem so that all of this would end. Drax said that when he touched the Soul Gem, he saw the horror within it. Nearby, Spot kicked Peter and asked where Turk was. Then Rocket fired while asking, "When I see him, whom shall I say I murdered?" Rocket's shot hit Spot, causing his body to emit beams in all directions. Rocket fired at Spot again, mocking Spot's ability to shoot beams in every direction when hit. At that moment, Iron Man shot Rocket's weapon until it broke. He asked where Strange was. Meanwhile, Drax orders Gamora to hand over the Power Stone or he'll do something, but Gamora slashes Drax's body and insists Drax won't do anything. In Gamora's vision, Thanos tells her they should kill Drax, but Gamora tells Thanos to shut up because he's already dead. Meanwhile, Groot looked confused by Gamora's behavior, and Peter realized this might be Thanos' doing. Thor asked if this was Thanos' doing, while Bullseye didn't care what was happening because Turk said there would be a party here. At that moment, Natasha appeared behind Bullseye and struck him with the butt of her gun. After that, Captain Marvel descended and stomped on Bullseye. Natasha says that's a good ending. Suddenly, Gamora jumps in front of Natasha and Captain Marvel and strikes them both, sending them flying. Captain Marvel appears to fall into Adam Warlock, but Adam intends to fly upward to keep the Soul Gem away from Gamora. Seeing this, Gamora orders Adam not to go, but Mjolnir and Cap's shield strike Gamora down simultaneously. Captain Marvel told Adam to stay here, while Gamora had to leave Earth, leaving her sword behind. Cap agreed. Now they were seen together with Black Widow, Black Panther, Peter Quill, Iron Man, Ghost Rider, She-Hulk, Thor, Groot, Spider-Man, Adam Warlock, Doctor Strange, Rocket, and Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel then rushes toward Gamora and lifts her up. Carol tells Gamora she can let go of her sword or it will fall because she's running out of breath. Meanwhile, Cap orders Turk's men to leave, and Spot agrees, departing while carrying Bullseye alongside Typhoid Mary, Tombstone, and Sandman. Peter still asks for time to speak with Gamora, but Cap says they've already tried that before. Suddenly, Gamora's sword falls. Moments later, Carol descends, carrying Gamora, who has run out of breath, and Cap orders Doctor Strange to bind Gamora. Doctor Strange binds Gamora with his magic, saying, "It feels like the crimson bands of Sidorak." Peter says that if they can have the Power Stone, he'll take Gamora into space, but Doctor Strange seems to disagree, because he believes there must be consequences for Gamora's actions. Peter asked what the consequences would be if Gamora killed Thanos. At that moment, Gamora, who was unable to move, appeared to be tapping the ground, while Cap looked startled by the tapping. He then looked at Carol, who was holding Stephen's shoulders, and said, "You're not thinking this through, Peter. Damn you. I didn't want this to happen." Realizing this, Cap shouted that Carol was Gamora, and that she had the Reality Stone, but it was too late. Carol transformed back into Gamora, then slammed Cap into Stephen. Gamora then kicked Iron Man and took the Time Stone and Mind Stone from Stephen. She then said that Adam would be better off dead if he wouldn't surrender. Gamora's sword flew to sever Adam's head. After that, the Soul Gem fell beside Adam's head, and Adam's body vanished. Black Widow leaped to attack Gamora while holding the Space Stone. She ordered someone to take the Soul Gem away, but Gamora froze time with the Time Stone and snatched the Space Stone from Black Widow's hand, whose movement had halted mid-air. Gamora apologized to Peter, then approached the Soul Gem, but seemed hesitant. At that moment, Thanos' figure urged Gamora to do it, claiming that if anything bad happened, she could reverse it. Thanos then looked at Rogers and remarked that he was trapped in the space-time continuum once again. Gamora took the Soul Gem, and a portal opened before her, from which another Gamora with blonde hair emerged. The black-haired Gamora said that people claimed this had been planned by Thanos, while the blonde-haired Gamora replied that it was an old story and had nothing to do with them. The two Gamoras hugged each other and merged into a single body. Gamora finally understood that what she had to do now was feed Devendra. Just then, Loki arrived and told Gamora to stop. He introduced himself and Floa, his biographer, and then said he had come to offer Gamora some advice. As soon as Loki met Gamora, she immediately pointed her sword at him. Loki begged her not to kill him, while Gamora asked why she shouldn't. Seeing this, Floa just laughed at Loki, prompting him to tell her that once Requiem killed him, she would be killed too. Floa replied that at least one of them could die like a man. Loki shouted that he was a god, while Gamora said she had already killed one god today, so killing another made no difference. Loki revealed that in another universe the same story had unfolded and the hero had recovered the stones. He asked her to trust him. Hearing this, Gamora immediately read Loki's mind and discovered that he had previously gone to the Quarry of Creation. Meanwhile, Thanos' figure tells Gamora to trust Loki, but Gamora slashes at Thanos' shadow, saying she doesn't trust anyone. Loki says he understands that the past is over, but at the quarry he found further evidence. Loki then tells her to look into another dimension using the stone she possesses. Gamora finally opens a portal to another dimension to see what Loki had mentioned, while Loki asks if Gamora is certain no one is controlling all of this from behind the scenes. Floa replies that everyone has their own problems. In another universe, it's clear that Gamora isn't the same entity as Requiem. Gamora is seen kicking Phyla while Moondragon tries to attack her, and behind them is a dragon with Thanos watching everything. Gamora finally closes the portal to that other dimension. She says she rules this dimension and isn't afraid of losing control because Moondragon and Phyla are already dead at the hands of others. But now she wants to know why she can't see into the Quarry of Creation. Loki offers to show her the way to the Quarry of Creation, but Gamora says she already knows the way, and Loki says he'll stay here in case Gamora changes her mind. Gamora disagrees. She wants them to enter the stone, so she reverses the flow of time. As soon as Thor could move again, he asked what Loki was doing here, and Loki said he was just trying to help. At that moment, Gamora ordered them to enter the Soul Gem to undergo judgment, and only the strongest would return. At that moment, Moon Knight asked what had happened to Spider-Man, and Spider-Man replied that Gamora had taken charge of the situation. Moon Knight asked who Gamora was, but Spider-Man just told him to hit whoever Spider-Man hit. Gamora said they wouldn't be able to interfere if they were bound to one another. At that moment, Cap and Steven, who were bound to each other, told them to stop Gamora, and Gamora retorted that they would have stopped her from the start if they could. After that, the Mind Stone, Space Stone, Time Stone, and Reality Stone were seen spinning to form an infinity symbol above Gamora's head. Moments later, the heroes spun and entered the Soul Gem. Thanos commented that, in his opinion, the universe was too vast and needed to be reduced, but what Gamora was doing was better than what Thanos would have done. Gamora said she didn't care what Thanos thought. Besides, Thanos didn't exist. Gamora then snapped her fingers and Thanos vanished. Seeing Gamora talking to herself, Floa looked at Loki and twirled her finger by her head, implying that Gamora was crazy. Gamora, still focused on her spell, says she's already shrunk the universe by half. Floa asks how she did it, while Loki interjects that the Soul Gem is merely a gateway. Several years ago, in the newly created Warp World, a soldier named Edgar greeted his superior who had just arrived. He explained that after Erskine was shot by a spy, they realized she wasn't the scientist they thought she was, and the super soldier serum she created was a fake. His superior thought Erskine had managed to create the serum before she was shot, but according to Edgar, that wasn't the case. He then showed his superior Erskine's workspace. Upon seeing the place, his superior was shocked because it looked like a witch's room with a cauldron and a star symbol there. Edgar explained that Erskine had promised a soldier who could end the war, but she didn't say where the soldier came from. His superior asked to meet the soldier, but Edgar warned that the soldier was just as clueless as they were. Edgar's superior then met a man who introduced himself as Private Stephen Rogers. It turned out this man was a fusion of Stephen and Captain America. Stephen Rogers saluted Edgar's superior, and then Edgar's superior took Edgar aside to talk. He asked why they had ended up with a man in a Halloween costume. Edgar replied that he had no explanation for this either. At that moment, Gamora outside Warp World saw Steven Rogers. She said that this wasn't what she had in mind, and Floa replied that Gamora possessed cosmic powers capable of controlling everything. Just then, Thanos' voice said he had a suggestion, but Gamora told him to be quiet. Thanos said that if there were many deaths, he wondered which one would be Gamora's, but Gamora said she wouldn't listen to Thanos anymore. Loki argued that many things in the universe were created by chance, and that Gamora had already created a new universe. In his view, becoming a god of a new universe wasn't so bad, especially since, after Gamora folded the universe in half, her enemies would struggle to free themselves again. Loki says he wants to go to the Quarry of Creation. At that moment, Gamora appears to be gathering the power of her stones again. Seeing this, Floa begs her not to share her life with Loki, while Loki says Floa should be grateful to become one with him. But then Loki asks Gamora not to do it. The result of Gamora's warp world created Iron Hammer, a fusion of Iron Man and Thor, Arachnite, a fusion of Moon Knight and Spider-Man, Soldier Supreme, a fusion of Doctor Strange and Captain America, and also Weapon, Hex, and Ghost Panther. Loki says that Gamora's father once reduced the number of living souls in the universe by half, and now Gamora is doing the same, albeit in a more creative way. Loki asks if Gamora had planned this. Thanos also asks Gamora if the two of them had planned it. Loki adds that unlike Thanos, Gamora has Loki's help, and Mephisto won't interfere with her. Gamora chokes Loki and says she isn't her father. Loki asks why the power of the Infinity Stones has diminished now that they're in their circuits. He asks why he's in this state here, when in another universe he could wield Mjolnir. He wants to know who caused this fate. Gamora seemed unwilling to believe Loki. At that moment, Floa chose to die rather than become one with Loki. Then Gamora asked why Floa wanted to write a book, and Floa replied that she wanted to leave something behind in this world. Finally, Gamora decides to take Floa to the Quarry of Creation, but Loki isn't allowed to come along. Gamora opens the portal to the warp world she created. Loki begs not to be sent there, but Gamora throws him into the warp world anyway. Once in the warp world, Loki burst out laughing and danced in the streets, asking where the X-Men lived. Passers-by assumed Loki was on drugs and told him to get a job. Just then, a man approached a box covered in spider webs. His hand touched the web, and he vanished from there. At God Quarry. Gamora and Floa arrive at God Quarry. Gamora sees carbon particles there and concludes that this place has existed for a long time. Floa asks why Gamora is trapped in the Soul World, and Gamora replies that Devondra lives in the heart of the Soul World. She is the reason the Soul Gem is always hungry. So, once Devondra is sated, Gamora will create a new branch of reality. Gamora says she'll do it once she uncovers the secret of this place, since she can't see the bottom of it, even though her vision should have no limits. Gamora decides to dig beneath her feet. With her power, the skeletons of the gods begin to rise, while Floa warns that inside lie millions of millennia of dead gods. Gamora replies that they have plenty of time to dig through them. Meanwhile, Loki has found the X-Men's house. He encounters a small red creature in front of the fence, speaking a language Loki doesn't understand. Loki told it to go away, but the creature clung to him. Upon reaching the front door, Loki heard someone say that evil Deadpool had lost his pants again. The voice turned out to be that of a blonde-haired Logan. Loki guessed that he was Logan, and Emma merged into one and asked if his name was Diamond Patch or Crazy Claws. Logan looked angry and extended his claws. Loki said he had come to ask for help, but Logan didn't believe him and stabbed Loki in the chest. Eventually, Logan used his psychic powers to read Loki's mind and trusted him, but he then went back inside the mansion and shut the door in Loki's face. Loki pounded on the door and told Logan that if his world was destroyed, Logan's world would be destroyed too, and they had to find Adam Warlock to stop it. A short while later, Logan was seen drinking wine while sitting down. He said that what he had seen in Loki's mind was too overwhelming, so he needed a drink. He concluded that Gamora, who didn't exist in this universe, had used the Infinity Stone to reduce the number of souls in the universe by merging several souls and sealing them within the Soul Gem, only to be devoured by the Soul Eater. Loki reasoned that this was why he needed a telepath, because what he needed had already been brought here by Gamora, and they didn't have much time. Logan argued that if everything in the universe had been duplicated and brought here, then the Infinity Stone should also be here. Loki agreed. He told Logan to immediately use his telepathic powers to do this. Suddenly, Loki warned of a spider hanging behind Logan's head, but the spider then grew and became a giant. Loki said the spider wasn't this big before, and Logan said he would see what was in the spider's mind. Logan touched the creature's head. He said its name was Devendra and that it was hungry for human souls. Loki mentioned that he'd read an ancient book about a spider that created the universe from its web, but some pages were torn. He stabbed Devendra and declared that none of this could be a coincidence. Loki was certain someone had planned all of this. He would kill them once he found out who did it. Loki then asked for the wine Logan had been drinking. Logan poured wine for Loki while explaining that he had once stabbed the Watcher and witnessed it merging with the Phoenix Force in the future, so in theory, he could send a message to his future self. Loki agreed, and just then the future Logan, possessing the Phoenix's power, suddenly appeared there. The future Logan admitted he'd received a message from the past Logan. He'd originally intended to ignore it, but many events in the future were triggered by what happened in the present, so the future Logan brought a time bat here. Loki says that the two of them must resolve this issue. Future Logan says he'll leave soon because Requiem will cause further problems if it sees Logan possessing the Phoenix Force. Logan then hands a stone to Loki and intends to leave, but before doing so, Loki asks him to separate Logan and Emma. Ultimately, the Phoenix Force separates Logan and Emma. Once separated, Emma says she's at a loss for words, while Logan remarks that the champagne he's holding is actually urine, and Loki asks who is hiding behind Logan's powers in the future. Hearing this, Thor appears. Thor says he couldn't hide from Loki, and Loki exclaims that Thor has become the king of the end of time. Logan asked if Thor had brought mead, but the future Logan told him to immediately take the stone to Warlock, because he knew what needed to be done. Once the future Logan vanished, the present-day Logan tossed the champagne glass in his hand and intended to find another drink, while Loki seemed about to pick up the stone on the floor, but Emma stopped him. Emma said she didn't trust Loki as long as she could defeat him. Emma takes the stone, while Loki comments that Emma can defeat him with the Power Stone in her hand, but according to Loki, it's mind over matter in the Lemniscate circuit. Loki starts thinking again about who he'll ask to join them. Emma reads his mind and asks, "Kang?" Logan, who's opening the fridge, says he'll grab a drink first before they leave, but suddenly, Devendra emerges from inside the fridge. Logan extended his claws and said that Devendra had ruined his beer. Devendra knocked Logan down, and Logan stabbed Devendra with his claws. Meanwhile, Loki and Emma walked out the door, leaving Logan behind because he was confident Logan could handle it. Loki then asked Emma where Kang was, and Emma said she would connect Loki to the location where they would teleport. Loki said his powers weren't at full strength here because he couldn't sense the World Tree or Asgard. Loki asked if Kang was far away. Emma placed the Power Stone on her head while answering that she was looking for a ride. Soon after, a man arrived on a motorcycle. Emma thanked him and told Loki that telepaths could borrow anyone's motorcycle. Loki told Emma to ride on the back, but Emma told him to sit in the back because she would be driving. On the motorcycle, Emma asked if they could rely on the Loki from another dimension she had met, and Loki replied that it didn't seem likely. Meanwhile, in another dimension, Requiem held Mjolnir, the hammer Loki had been wielding, and was about to strike Loki with it, while Loki said he would meet Requiem in Hell. Requiem replied that Hell was empty, then struck Loki with the hammer, ending his life. Requiem then looked at Phyla and Moondragon, whom she had bound with a red beam, and told them they didn't have to end up like this if they just told her where the Reality Stone was, since she already possessed the other 5 stones. Phyla says she loves Heather, aka Moondragon, and Moondragon agrees. They finally kiss, and Moondragon says she's ready to reveal the stone's location. Hearing this, Phyla looks shocked and forbids her from telling her. Requiem released Moondragon from her bonds, and Moondragon said she had hidden the stone and erased her own memories, so Requiem would have to dig into Moondragon's memories herself. Requiem warned Heather not to try anything, and she began probing her memories, but a small dragon emerged from Moondragon and attacked Requiem's hand. It turned out Moondragon had locked Requiem in a mental combat. She told Phyla to finish Requiem off now. Phyla broke free from the red light binding her body. She ordered Moondragon to leave Requiem's mind because it was impossible for Phyla to attack Requiem while Moondragon was inside. Moondragon said it was already too late. It turned out Requiem had already managed to locate the stone and had regained control of herself. Phyla asked how they could win, and Moondragon replied that they couldn't win here. She then pulled Phyla away. Moondragon explained that while inside Requiem's mind, she had created a way for them to escape this universe. As they crossed dimensions, Phyla asked if that meant they were dead, and Moondragon replied that it was possible. They held hands, and Phyla said it was a beautiful sight. Moondragon smiled and said they were dying as Dimensionauts. Phyla was happy that Moondragon was happy, but she should have listened to Moondragon and joined the Guardians because things might have been different. Just then, Moondragon was about to speak, but Phyla told her not to be so soft-hearted now. A rainbow appeared before them, and they entered it, emerging upside down on the other side. Then, Moondragon's voice was heard, hoping this universe would be different. Back in the warp world, a rainbow appeared in the black sky while Loki and Emma were meeting Kang, who, in this world, was a woman. Kang doesn't understand why they say she should be different because this is how she's always been. Emma then shows a vision in Kang's mind that she is Kang, and Kamala merged into one due to the power of the Infinity Stones. Emma then holds Kang and Loki's heads. She says this world was created from the souls of the Prime Universe merging into one, but they can restore it. Moments later, Kang and Kamala separate. Loki says that at that moment, he knew Requiem would read his mind, so he imagined the people he needed fused into one. That's why Emma merged with Wolverine. Once Kamala separated from Kang, she looked up at the rain-soaked sky and said that the world she'd been living in. Kang continued that it was all just a coincidence. Emma said that sometimes interesting things come from coincidence. Loki then embraced both of them. He told Kamala that they would form a team, and Kang interjected that they were working with Kang the Conqueror. Kang asked who else they needed, and they teleported to an ice mountain, where a small Hulk was there, saying he wouldn't join them. Loki said they'd make him do it, while Kamala asked what he looked like when he was big and angry. The Hulk jumped and punched Loki, but Emma immediately grabbed the Hulk. She said she'd usually let the Hulk do whatever he wanted, but she was holding the Power Stone and their time was running out. Emma then used the Power Stone's power to split the Hulk into Banner and Ant-Man. Ant-Man says the last thing he remembers is the buffet restaurant closing early and him not getting a refund. Then Banner adds that this strange experience ranks third on his list. He asks what their plan is. Loki says they have a plan, but Banner isn't part of it. Emma holds Banner's head while saying goodbye, but Banner says the Hulk won't agree. Then the Hulk appears, replacing Banner. Hulk said he hated this, and at that moment Loki explained that they were here as potential holders of the Infinity Stones when the time came. Loki said he would explain further later. Kamala replied that she didn't want to use the Infinity Stones, but Loki didn't care. He then asked Emma to help Kang find their final member. They then moved to a place with red light all around them. Kamala asked where they were, and Emma explained that this was what the Soul World actually looked like. Hulk said he liked it here, and Loki replied that he knew why Hulk liked it, because they were in constant danger of being eaten by ancient monsters. Ant-Man asked who they were looking for here, and Emma answered that Adam Warlock was there and he was in trouble. They ran toward where Adam was, while many people lay on the ground covered in spider webs. Seeing Devandra's form, Kamala said it was disgusting. Adam appeared to be wrapped up by Devandra and told them to get out of there, while Kamala said she'd handle the bottom. She wrapped her arms around Devandra's legs and remarked on how disgusting they were. Meanwhile, Hulk decided to attack from above. He jumped and struck Devandra, but Devandra managed to swallow Adam whole. Ant-Man looked shocked to see Adam being eaten. Then Emma slapped his butt and told him to act. Lang questioned whether they should help Warlock since he didn't know him, and besides, Warlock was famous for being dead. But Emma told him to hurry or she'd take over Lang's body, and eventually Lang shrank and flew into Devandra's mouth. He felt he shouldn't have gone into space and how foolish he was to do this. Seeing this, Emma commented on how foolish the Avengers were to do this. She thought she'd bring them both back to life once she had the Power Stone. Suddenly, Lang transformed into a giant form while holding Warlock in his hand. He asked them to help free him from the spider's body he'd torn apart. Kamala dragged Lang along with the Hulk, who was complaining about Lang's childish behavior, and once Lang was freed from Devendra and returned to his normal form, he described how awful it had been inside that spider's body. Kamala remarked that at least the creature was dead, but the Hulk said it had healed itself. Hulk looked at the creature mending its wounds with spider webs and remarked, "Impressive." Warlock urged them to confront Devendra immediately, but Loki argued that they needed Warlock to show them the way out of the Soul World and face Gamora in the real world to obtain the Infinity Stone. Warlock was furious that Loki wanted to leave. He grabbed Loki by the collar and said the battle was right here, but Loki replied that out there they'd have to face Requiem. Emma realized Warlock wanted more heroes to face Devendra while they needed a way out of here. Emma then summoned the heroes, saying, "To me, my heroes, your lives are on the line. We need more heroes." She says this while visualizing heroes in the warp world like Aradinite, Soldier Supreme, the Thing engulfed in flames, She-Hulk with red hair, Ghost Panther, Iron Hammer, and Weapon Hex. At that moment, Soldier Supreme, who was facing the spider army, contacted Arachnite and said he would head to Emma's call immediately. Arachnite would also go there after dealing with the spiders at the Daily Bugle, while Weapon Hex, who was also facing the spiders, remarked that these creatures kept coming. In a pub, Emma's call is heard there, and Art, who is playing the saxophone, appears to follow Emma's words. We need more heroes. His bandmates feel Art is ruining their performance because he stopped playing the saxophone, but Art doesn't care and walks away while continuing to mutter to himself. A reflection in the mirror reveals that Art is actually Drax. Meanwhile, at the Quarry of Creation, Floa asks if the heroes in the warp world won't fight back, and Gamora answers that they will fight. But in her opinion, their resistance is meaningless. Once Devendra is sated, she will spin new threads, and from there a new reality will be born, while Gamora will be the one to weave that reality. Floa asks if Gamora can do it because she has the Infinity Stone, and Gamora nods while striking the ground beneath her with her sword. She feels nothing should be blocking her from looking inside here. Floa asked if that was because now wasn't the time for infinite power, but infinite finesse. At that moment, Thanos told Gamora he could help her, but Gamora refused. Meanwhile, Floa, who couldn't see Thanos, thought Gamora was rejecting her advice. She said that even if Gamora couldn't open this universe, what happened afterward was still worth a song. Gamora ignored Floa. She asked Thanos what made him say that. Thanos looked up and said, "They do." Gamora, who also looked up, saw the 7 Watchers above them, and Thanos muttered, "Behold, Infinity's End." At the Quarry of Creation, Floa tells Gamora that her Infinity Blade won't be able to pierce this dimensional barrier. As Gamora continues to strike the barrier with her sword, she looks up at the Watchers and asks what they see, since there's nothing to see here. Gamora held up the Soul Gem, saying that nothing would be able to escape the Soul Gem before Devendra devoured everything inside it. In the warp world, Weapon Hex, who was facing Devendra, said that this creature kept coming. Many other heroes were helping her: Arachnite, Kang, Hulk, Iron Hammer, the Thing, Kamala, Ant-Man, and Ghost Panther. Soldier Supreme, who is striking Devendra alongside Adam, asks if his name is Warlock. And Adam confirms it, remarking that he looks like a combination of Doctor Strange and Captain America. Warlock says they'll restore what Requiem did to its original state, but Soldier Supreme replies that's exactly what he fears, since he's lived as Soldier Supreme all this time and doesn't want to be restored. Warlock replied that it would make things more complicated because, in theory, a world without Devendra would be a safe world, but they need to control the stones, so they have to hope Loki and his friends succeed in facing Gamora out there. At that moment, Emma appeared to be in Ant-Man's arms, followed by Loki, Hulk, Kamala, and Kang. Ant-Man asked if Emma could get down from his arms because his back hurt, and Emma replied that they had arrived. Ant-Man commented that it was amazing. Hulk remarked, "Puny-minded human." Emma told Loki she'd speak to the woman herself, but Loki refused. However, Emma insisted and decided to bring Kamala instead, since this was a conversation between women. Besides, she didn't want to die here because Loki was the one talking to her. Kamala said she didn't know who they'd meet there. She stretched her body to look inside the treehouse and gasped when she saw it. At that moment, Emma climbed the rope ladder up the tree while asking permission to go up. Once inside the treehouse, they saw a young Gamora with the 5 Infinity Stones. Kamala asked if this was young Gamora. Emma confirmed it, and Gamora asked if they wanted to play with her. Emma replied that they couldn't, but they wanted to borrow her toys. Hearing this, Gamora looked sulky. Kamala asked if Gamora had been there for a long time, and Gamora replied that she'd been there since her parents died, and then she came along with that man. Gamora said the man wasn't allowed here because this was her own place. Meanwhile, Loki explained to the other 3 heroes that Requiem had folded their universe in half and accidentally created new beings. After that, she duplicated everything and placed it within the Soul Gem, including those stones. Hulk reasoned that if that were the case, Gamora must be here as well. At that moment, Kamala appeared with Emma and young Gamora, as Kamala said there was nothing to fear from Gamora, and Emma added that Gamora had allowed them to borrow her stones. Finally, Loki made the 6 stones they possessed float. He said, "Mind governs matter," so Emma would maximize the Power Stone's power, then as the strongest, Hulk would use the Space Stone, while Kang's ability to control time would be useful with the Reality Stone. Ant-Man has the ability to manipulate space, so the Time Stone will be given to him. Then, since Loki himself has died and been resurrected and triumphed across multiple realities, the Soul Stone will belong to him, while Ms. Marvel, whose mind is not easily corrupted, will receive the Mind Stone. Kamala argues that this sounds crazy and asks what if Loki is wrong? But Loki replies that if he is wrong, they will all die and both universes will go down with them. Loki then opens a portal to exit the warp world. Hulk looks at the Space Stone and says only Requiem deserves to die here, while Ant-Man wishes them good luck. Loki then enters the portal while explaining their plan. He says Emma will go in first. Just then, Flawa noticed a portal opening. She said it looked like someone was coming, and suddenly, Moondragon and Phyla fell right in front of her. Moondragon said it seemed like they'd returned to this party, and Phyla agreed. Seeing the 2 of them arrive, Gamora said they shouldn't be here, but they both replied that they wouldn't be here if Gamora hadn't destroyed their universe. At the same time, Phyla stabbed Gamora in the chest and Moondragon attacked Gamora's head with her power. Gamora swatted her hand, sending Phyla flying, then choked Moondragon while calling out Heather's name. Gamora pulled the sword embedded in her chest, declaring that nothing could kill her. Just then, a voice declared that this wasn't fair. Gamora was startled and turned to look. At that moment, Emma tells Gamora to try facing them, while Ant-Man says they've only recently become a team, but asks if he can request the stone from Gamora. Though Ant-Man knows it's impossible, he just wants to try asking. Gamora pulls out her sword, saying she doesn't know how they can separate themselves from their other selves. Emma transformed her body into a diamond, saying that the things Gamora didn't know could fill a library. Emma added, "Mind over matter." Gamora's sword slashed at Emma's body, but the sword shattered instead. Emma pulled out the Power Stone and said she could draw more power from this stone than Gamora could. Gamora was baffled by how this could happen, while Kamala quietly took the Power Stone from Gamora's sword and told her friends that Gamora's sword was no longer powerful. Emma admitted she knew they couldn't trust Loki, but he was right about the power within a person being able to amplify the stone's output. She would show what could be done with the Space Stone. Just then, Hulk pulled Gamora into space. Emma explains that the Hulk is so strong because he's using the Space Stone, allowing him to release the gravitational pull on both of them. We see the Hulk slam Gamora into the ground. He then pulls her back up, saying, "You're pretty funny, sticking me to the puniest human." After that, the Hulk slams Gamora into the ground again, saying, "I kinda like you. Sorry for the rough stuff." Not only that, but the Hulk also hurled Gamora hard into the hillside, causing her to bounce from one wall to another, and the shadow of her movement formed a star. The injured Gamora says she isn't finished and must recreate the universe, but Kang replies that it's unnecessary because he controls time and, with the Reality Stone, he will be the one to recreate the universe. Gamora wipes beneath her eyes and says Kang won't be able to do it if he dies. But then, many versions of Kang appear there, in the forms of Ramatut, Immortus, and Iron Lad. They tell Gamora she won't be able to defeat them. Gamora asks why they can't see it. She says that after Devondra consumes the old universe, she'll recreate a new one so they won't have to suffer. Gamora then attacks Kang and Iron Lad in front of her, while Immortus attacks Gamora from behind. According to Gamora, she doesn't need to continue living in this universe. Gamora keeps fighting the various versions of Kang, but then she asks where Ant-Man is. Lang says that Gamora's intuition has ruined everything. Lang is seen flying behind Gamora and climbing onto the red stone while hugging the blue stone. He says he's only managed to obtain the reality and space stones. Lang then flies away shouting, "Ant-Man out!" At that moment, Loki is seen picking up a stone from the ground. He says this might work. All he needs are a few of these stones. Meanwhile, Gamora says that this wasn't supposed to end like this, when suddenly, Moondragon's dragon chokes Gamora from behind, saying that Gamora has done wrong. Meanwhile, the figure of Thanos, visible only to Gamora, agrees with the dragon's words, saying he's glad he didn't have to live to see this. Kamala, standing beside Gamora, agrees that this is true. At that moment, Emma appears and rains a hail of pebbles down on Gamora, saying she prefers Dom, but that the Power Stone is quite intoxicating. In her heart, Gamora wonders why no one else sees what she sees, because she believes Loki is playing them and has obtained all the stones. Loki is seen high-fiving Kamala and praising her psychic attack from earlier. At the same time, Emma claps her hands, sending Gamora flying far from where she was standing. Loki is still seen approaching Ant-Man and praising his work. He then says that now is the time to get to work. Just then, Phyla and Moondragon ran toward Gamora to attack her. Moondragon said, "No quarter." Loki then opened a portal and pulled Gamora, Phyla, and Moondragon into it. Seeing this, Kang and Emma protested. Emma asked what had happened to his promise to kill Gamora. Loki was seen holding all the Infinity Stones in his hands. He replied that he had already killed Gamora by sending her through the portal, and he asked permission to see what was inside the Quarry of Creation. Seeing the stones, Lang realized his stone was missing and that Loki now possessed all of them. Loki then sank into the ground, saying that if he didn't return, it meant he'd found something better inside. Seeing this, Emma could only curse, while Hulk punched Lang in the head until he passed out. Hulk then kicked the ground beneath him, but the rocky ground didn't shatter. Hulk swept his hand over the ground and found Loki had already left. Seeing all this, Floa commented that she hadn't expected Loki to do it. Loki, who was behind the wall, felt as though he were in another world. The Infinity Stones fell to the ground because they held no power here, but Loki kept them in his pocket just in case. He felt he could use his magic in this place without the help of the Infinity Stones. But after walking for a while, Loki encountered many colorful stones resembling Infinity Stones scattered across the ground and sky of that place, along with several dark celestials mining Infinity Stones in the Quarry of Creation. Loki then shouted, "I am Loki, son of Laufey, Prince of Asgard, the Lord of Lies and the God of Stories. Are these my puppet masters? How dare you?" At that moment in the warp world, the Soldier Supreme said that this was all in vain because every time they defeated Devondra, she could heal herself. It turned out Devondra couldn't die while they could. Warlock said this wouldn't change unless something happened. Just then, Warlock saw a portal open. He assumed Loki had succeeded in killing Gamora, but those who entered were Requiem, Phyla, and Moondragon. Seeing this, Warlock gave the order to attack Requiem, so Warlock, Soldier Supreme, Phyla, and Moondragon all attacked Requiem simultaneously. Meanwhile, Moondragon reminded them to retrieve the stones. Elsewhere, Art is seen getting into a car with a girl. The girl says it looks like the end of the world. She also tells Art to slow down because she doesn't like the way the trees look. The girl says they're going to die in this car. Art replies that won't happen, even though they've already died once. Yvette is confused by what Art means. She asks if he's having a nervous breakdown. Art says no, but he's having a vision of a battle up ahead, and he has to be there. Suddenly, Yvette warns Art to be careful, but their car has already crashed into Devondra. Art and Yvette get out of the car. Art asks if Yvette is okay, and she says yes, then asks what just happened. Art took out his saxophone and replied that he didn't know, but something wasn't right. Art sat lost in thought under a tree, saying he wished he knew what to do. Just then, the tree Art was leaning against said, "We are Pete." At that moment, they both realized the tree had a face. Yvette was very startled, but Arthur felt that this tree was their friend. The tree had legs and lifted Art by pulling on the collar of his shirt, while Art told Yvette that he was going to do a gig. He was a mix of Groot and Star-Lord, yet he kept saying, "We are Pete." Pete then flew Art away, and Art said goodbye to Yvette, telling her that he would return after fixing something. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to be together. But if he couldn't return, he wanted to tell her that he loved Yvette. Beneath the quarry of creation, also known as the Prime Universe. Looking at the gods inside, Loki asked if they were the gods who governed everything in this life. At that moment, one of the gods raised his hand, and while Loki asked them not to do anything rash, the god pointed to a black wall. Loki asked if they were the ones who wrote his destiny, and if so, could he see his future? Loki looked at the wall surface and actually laughed. A moment later, his expression turned somber, and he pulled an infinity stone from his pocket, stating that this stone couldn't be used here. He then turned to the gods and said he hoped they wouldn't throw these stones into their universe anymore. He asked if they were doing it for themselves or for the beings in the universe. Loki then opened a curtain behind which there was a beam of light. He said he knew when he had lost. At the quarry of creation. Emma said that the stone left behind by Loki had become inactive. Kang pulled out his stone and asked if Emma was sure. Hulk nodded while looking at the stone in his hand, and the stone he was holding turned into grains of sand. Moments later, Loki reappears before them. He says there are too many stones here, so he's eliminating the others. Ant-Man suspects this is Loki's true plan, to obtain all the Infinity Stones, while Loki tells them to keep these stones because they don't have time to save the universe. Hulk, Emma, Ant-Man, Kamala, and Kang gathered to divide the stones Loki had given them. Emma asked if Loki was lying to them again, and Loki, walking toward his boat, said that this time there was no lie. At the very least, he just wanted them to survive. Loki then boards his ship. He tells Floa about everything that has been holding him back all this time, like Logan's appearance just as he was about to obtain the Space Stone and the pages of the book that were torn out earlier. It seems Loki has been through this before, and he has been the one preventing himself from uncovering the secrets of the universe. Floa remarked that if that's true, she owes him a lifetime's worth of punches. Loki replied that he's already accepted his punishment and he alone is responsible for all of this. He then asked Floa to take him back to Omnipotent City because he's no longer interested in witnessing the apocalypse in Soul World. A red-haired She-Hulk is seen entangled by Devandra's tentacles, while Ghost Panther is separated from his mount and Warlock attacks Devandra. Soldier Supreme demands the stones from Requiem or he'll kill her, but Requiem replies that Soldier Supreme isn't the real person. He's merely a mistake that Requiem will erase. At that moment, the stones in Requiem's hands turned into ordinary stones and fell to the ground. Seeing this, Soldier Supreme struck Requiem, then asked her how to stop this monster from devouring the world. Requiem replied that there was no way to stop Devandra from devouring them all. Now, without the stones, no one could create a new universe, and entropy would ensue. Hearing this, the Soldier Supreme said that at least Requiem would be the first to feel it. The Soldier Supreme then struck Requiem again, sending her flying far away. Unexpectedly, Requiem slid into Devandra's mouth, and at that moment, Pete arrived and saved Requiem. Pete stated that they were the Guardians of the Galaxy. Art retorted that they hadn't done any Guardian work at all, while Gamora said none of this would have happened if he hadn't stopped her from entering the Soul Gem earlier. The three of them then landed. Art asked where the magic stones were, and Gamora replied that the stones seemed dead. Warlock held the lifeless stones. He said this couldn't be possible because the universe still existed, so the stones must exist too. Just then, Kamala's voice was heard. She said they had brought the stones here, including the Soul Gem. Kamala handed the Soul Gem to Warlock, and Warlock asked if they had defeated Loki. Kamala replied that Loki had defeated himself. Warlock says they must use these stones simultaneously to defeat Devandra, while Gamora says they can't defeat her as long as she's in the soul world. Devendra is the reason the soul gem is always hungry. They can only create a new world from the threads she weaves later. Meanwhile, Thanos' figure tells Gamora that she's as weak as when Thanos took her from her mother's body. Warlock argues that they should separate their friends, who are still fused together, restore their universe, and leave this place. However, the Soldier Supreme seems to disagree and asks what will happen to his world in the future. He wants both this universe and the other one to survive, with no one sacrificed. Warlock begins to consider duplicating all the souls in the warp world and sending them to their universe, but Devendra would still remain a threat here. Hulk doesn't want that creature to devour him, so he'll harness the power of the Space Stone in his hand. Seeing this, Ant-Man urges him not to act rashly. Then Hulk strikes Devendra's chest with his Space Stone-clad hand until a black hole appears in her chest. Ant-Man asks Hulk if he used the Space Stone to create the black hole, and Hulk replies that physics is the ultimate power. He simply let nature take its course. Hulk then jumps off Devendra's body and lands on the ground, telling Emma and her friends that he's disposed of the trash and they can go home now. According to Warlock, they had to fix their friends first. He then raised the Soul Gem, causing Pete to transform into Groot and Star-Lord, while Art became Art and Drax. Star-Lord thanked him, but then asked who that was. Art mentioned his name was Arthur Douglas, and Drax explained that he had always had two souls. Warlock then asked where Rocket was. At that moment, Rocket emerged from Groot's chest. He said he'd been sleeping too long and asked what had happened. Warlock then asked Ms. Marvel to imagine a new world. Ms. Marvel asked what he planned to do, and Warlock replied that they would create a new universe. Using the power of the 6 stones carried by each hero, Warlock would pull their friends from the warp world back into their own universe, but he would duplicate them so the warp world could remain intact. Warlock's power then entered the portal to their universe, while Emma asked civilians not to remember any of this to avoid causing panic, and Ms. Marvel added that the stones usually always cause destruction. Now they had to create something. Shortly after, Iron Hammer is seen flying through space, with Soldier Supreme beside him, declaring that it worked. At that moment, Arachnite appears and asks what's happening, and Soldier Supreme replies that they've saved the world. Back to Warlock, who says that the altered world has been created. Now they just need to replicate everything into their own universe. At the same time, Drax meets Moondragon and asks why she and Fila are here. Moondragon hugs Drax and explains that Requiem destroyed their universe, causing them to fall into this one. She never expected to meet both versions of her father here. Hearing this, Art seemed incredulous that Drax had a child. Viola reminded them that the black hole was about to finish absorbing Devendra, and they were now in danger, but Warlock told them they could only create one portal. Kamala argued they shouldn't have to remember any of this, but Emma wanted to keep the memory of herself becoming Diamond Patch with Logan. Kamala refused, and according to Emma, Kamala wouldn't be able to become an X-woman with that kind of attitude. Art touched Drax's shoulder and urged him to create 2 portals. Eventually, the single portal was split by Art and Drax into 2 equal parts, and through the portals, the same cityscape was visible. Warlock praised their efforts. He then directed the power of the Soul Gem toward both portals to save both universes. A moment later, Warlock announced that their universe was safe and that Warp World was secure on the other side of the Soul Gem. Warlock explained that the price to be paid was for Drax and Art to keep holding the Lemniscate while they passed through it. Gamora disagreed. She hoped there was another way, but Warlock insisted the portal would close if they let go. Hearing this, Art agreed, and Drax did as well. Warlock thanked them both. He then enveloped them, who were about to leave this world, within the Soul Gem to protect them during the transition, and the Soul Gem entered one of the portals. At that moment, Art said he was glad to have worked with Drax, and Drax hoped to meet Art again in the next life. As the Soul Gem entered that world, Moondragon remarked that they had already seen both worlds destroyed, and Phyla replied, "Don't things happen in threes?" Moondragon felt that sometimes Phyla was hard to love. The Soul Stone then crossed dimensions and fell to Earth. At that moment, Gamora came to first and saw the Infinity Stones lying before her, while Phyla, who had also regained consciousness, forbade Gamora from taking the stones. Moondragon added that Gamora had not yet atoned for her actions in destroying their universe. Star-Lord stood in front of Gamora and said they'd have to get past him before they could kill her. He reminded them they'd just prevented a catastrophe. Phyla said that the Requiem in their world had already destroyed the universe, so why should this Requiem be spared? Star-Lord said it was because Gamora hadn't done it here, while Gamora said she'd give them the fight they wanted, but Peter disagreed. Moondragon tells Phyla that in their world, Peter Quill died in the Cancerverse. Perhaps Star-Lord's presence here changes everything. Phyla feels she can't entrust the fate of the universe to Gamora's friend, while Emma suggests they split the Infinity Stone into 2 parts and separate them. Kang tries to grab the Reality Stone to throw it into the end of time, but Hulk swats Kang's hand away and forbids him from touching it. Kang is furious that Hulk dared to touch it. Warlock says that the spark will cause another massive fire. Hearing this, Peter forbids Warlock from touching the Soul Gem. Warlock says he won't touch it because what he needs is the Time Stone. Warlock then touches the Green Stone and stops time. He held all 6 stones in his hands. He didn't want the chaos to happen again and wanted to fix everything. He looked at Phyla and Moondragon, who had escaped to this universe and was torn about whether to save Drax and let Phyla and Moondragon die. He then approached Gamora, aka Requiem, who would surely be killed by one of them once time resumed. Warlock felt that those who had ever possessed the power of the Infinity Stones were always destroyed by their own choices, so this time he would let the stone make that choice. Before long, time resumed. Peter told Warlock not to touch the Soul Stone, but he realized Gamora was gone and asked where she was. Warlock replied that he had sent her away. Rocket commented that this would start all over again, while Warlock said he had banished Gamora and released the Infinity Stone's power. Peter asked where Warlock had sent her, and Warlock answered that he didn't know. He only hoped the stone had sent her to a place where she could do good, since she too could atone for her mistakes. So he hoped Gamora would as well. Peter gets angry and says they're back to square one, but Groot holds Peter back and tells him to calm down. Kang says that Warlock mentioned he'd released the stone's power. He asks whom Warlock released it to, and Warlock answers that he released it to the stones themselves. In his view, humans are always fighting for control over the stone's power, so they'll never be free from this burden. That's why Warlock gave a soul to each stone so they could write their own destinies. The 5 stones then departed, leaving the Soul Gem still in Warlock's hand. The Warlock said that long ago, the stones gave him a soul, and it seems he knows why they did it, because he can bestow the same soul upon the stones. This soul will strive to protect itself or die in the attempt. And even if they die, everything will return here. Peter argued that at the very least, this was something they'd never tried before. He felt Warlock would keep the Soul Gem. Warlock agreed because he and the Soul Gem shared a special bond, but suddenly the Soul Gem flew upward, leaving Warlock behind and leaving him stunned. Peter said the gem seemed to have other plans. He regretted that it had left him, but he was sure there would be another gem for him later. Warlock was still looking up at the sky and told Peter to be quiet. Peter still felt Warlock shouldn't have sent Gamora away, but Warlock walked off saying Peter should be grateful that he saved Gamora and added that he needed some time alone. Peter finally asked Phyla and Moondragon if they needed anything, but the 2 of them were just gently stroking each other's cheeks. Moondragon replied that they were fine, and Phyla added that they already had everything they needed. After that, Phyla and Moondragon flew away together. Ant-Man checked his phone and asked if anyone had a signal because he wanted to hitch a ride if they ordered a rideshare. And Peter replied that they'd just returned from another universe, so he was sure they could get out of Egypt. A moment later, Peter felt sad about losing Drax. Groot hugged Peter. He said he was sad to lose a friend and hoped Peter wouldn't disappear or die after this. And Peter agreed that was a good thought. Peter's group walked away and parted ways with Warlock. Meanwhile, Arthur Douglas turned out not to be dead and was living happily with Yvette. Inside their home, Yvette danced to the sound of Art's saxophone. They embraced and kissed. On their table lay a copy of the Daily Bugle showing Soldier Supreme, Ironhammer, and Weapon Hex as the World Defenders were formed. At the Citadel of Defenders, Soldier Supreme, Iron Hammer, and Weapon Hex faced the press. Soldier Supreme stated that their universe was created from a cosmic collision. He removed his mask and declared that he would defend this world, and they would become the defenders for it. They all raised their hands together. Somewhere else, Gamora looks at a mound in front of her. She then stands up and kicks the mound, asking what Warlock has done. At that moment, a man emerges from the mound and says he is Magus. Gamora says she knows who he is, and Magus asks where this is and why he's here. Gamora replied that it was a long story. She told Magus to follow her, and she would explain. Thanos' shadow remarked that he wanted to see how Gamora would handle this, while Magus asked how Gamora had found him, and Gamora answered that her friend had sent her here, in Omnipotence City. Floa says that this is the end of the story, but she'll leave a few blank pages at the back in case there are additions later on. Loki, sitting in front of Floa, asks if she'd like to accompany him on his next journey because the consequences of Warlock's actions will be immense. Floa refuses because the library needs her. Loki had expected Floa to refuse, but he'll miss her. Floa then closed the book she had just written and placed it on the shelf. The book was titled Floa, first of her name, with an infinity symbol on it. Elsewhere, the Warlock looked up at the sky. He then drew an infinity symbol in the sand with his staff, looked back up at the sky, and said that he felt a part of himself was missing. In the end, this wasn't just about power. It was about control over reality itself. Gamora didn't win through strength. She outplayed everyone, from the Avengers to the Guardians, reshaping the universe into something entirely her own. Warp World twisted everything we knew, merging heroes like Hulk, Emma Frost, and even the Guardians of the Galaxy into something unrecognizable, where identity itself no longer mattered. So what do you think? Was Gamora trying to fix reality in her own way? Or did she go too far? Because this isn't the end, and the story continues, and one of the key pieces moving forward is Wolverine and the Infinity Stones. If you want to see what happens next, check out my Infinity Watch Wolverine video already on the channel. This is Panelix, and may your day be a pleasant one.